year. Welcome to How to Go Independent. It's 2016. Hope the year is treating you well so far. Obviously, the markets have not cooperated, but I think that's leads to a great point that I've found over the last few years being independent. I know several of my colleagues bring it up. In fact, the woman who came with me from Morgan Stanley when I went independent in 2009 said it often the first few years after we left. She had been licensed in the wirehouses for 32 years. And one thing that she noted the first couple years that we were independent was no one was on her about what numbers she was going to do in the coming year. So I think that is a good starting point for talking about goals. I think goals are important. They help us achieve. They give us a framework to work towards. But the big question I would ask you is, whose goals are you working towards? Whose goals are you working towards? And I think the answer to that is a huge reason why I value my independence so much, and I think a lot of my colleagues do as well. So in the 7 years I spent as an employee, the goals that were in the business planning software or program or conversations that I had, they were never really about my goals. It wasn't about what kind of income I thought I needed to support my family comfortably and to sock away money for my long-term future or my kids' education, or so that my wife could stay home and when we had kids before our first was born. Nothing about what was important to me and my values and my goals. Very much about how much growth was required, especially new in the business. That's natural. The company that hires you wants to see you grow into a viable practice. But even as in the later part of that 7 years, where I had established a baseline production where it was obvious I was going to survive in the business, there was never any discussion about what I was looking to do or what my short or long-term goals were. Or if there was, it was very much about how that supported the bigger company's profitability and bottom line. So that is, and I never felt undue pressure towards those numbers, except maybe the first year or two when there was a production chart that was very clear at Edward Jones. If you didn't meet these numbers, there were going to be consequences or potential consequences. But again, I think that was healthy to encourage the activities to build the business, or at least it was healthy for me. But the big question is, whose goals are you working towards? There's a lot of different areas, even as it relates just to the business, regardless of your personal goals. But, in a revenue goal, it's great to have a target of what kind of income, gross revenue you want to generate or think you will generate for the year. But I think that should be driven by the advisor and his team, not by someone else whose goals don't necessarily align with mine. New relationships. I think each of us should be able to build our own business either by doing the best job to deepen the relationships we have, or to go out and develop new ones. And I find that in a lot of employee situations, the idea of just taking care of your existing clients the best you can to engender more referrals is not really an acceptable goal. In fact, even in the independent world, I think there's a natural bias for us all saying we want to grow, and therefore we want to do marketing and get new clients, which is fine. I have nothing against that, but I think just the ability to pick and choose how we develop our business. If we're in the later stages of our career, maybe we don't want to add new clients unless they really fit our target profile. And sometimes that means really not taking on new clients. And maybe it means divesting of relationships that no longer seem to fit. I've noticed just as my practice has matured and I have another business going, that I don't have as much patience for clients that don't sort of fit the mold of my other clients. And that may not be anything against that. The client who's an outlier for me, it's just not the best fit. And so I've done my best to try and help find connections with other advisors. Also there are, in some firms, I know there are goals or targets or requirements or quotas, however you want to say it, for financial plans done with clients, or a certain amount of insurance business has to be done, or a certain number of checking accounts have to be open if you're in a bank channel. So any of those product or I wouldn't call financial plan a product, but I know in some places it's treated as such. But any kind of specific behaviors that have to be accomplished to meet other goals, it's sort of that carrot and stick approach. As much flexibility as we have as in the employee world as advisors, because of the nature of our industry, to me it just seems less than optimal to have to worry about writing up a formal financial plan for a certain number of people in a given year if there isn't a true need for it. Maybe, or if the advisor's practice doesn't use that particular software in that particular way or without the same frequency. There are certain people who are happy to do a financial plan review every quarter, and other clients who, if you can get them to do that every 5 years, you're lucky because they want us to worry about things. So we all have, there are different environments, different relationships that, again, a lot of what I believe is, the fewer outside influences we have on our relationships with our clients, other than the compliance and oversight that's required and understandably necessary in this industry. Other than that, I'm a big believer that we shouldn't have that, and it's not valuable. It gets in the way of us doing the best work for our clients, because there are so many resources out there to help us. I'm not sure we need a mandate from an employer to assist in that. I think it detracts from the relationship. And then, of course, another thing that is driven by living on someone else's goals is your net compensation. If your compensation from a payout standpoint is driven by, if you get to X hundreds of thousands of dollars, your payout is, 1%. And if you get to the next threshold, it's 2 points higher. Again, I think that puts us in a position where even if we're doing the right things, you can be influenced negatively to think about, doing a transactional doing a transaction where normally you do more recurring revenue or advisory. And I think that's just not a good place to be, where you have to worry about the different thresholds. And I find the independent model, which is generally a flat payout by and large, that's just a much cleaner and simpler way to operate. And certainly there are at the margins, there's a little bit extra, 1% or 2%. But again, we're talking the difference between 80 and 81%, or 90 and 91%, not the difference between 28 or, if you don't get to this particular minimum level, between 28% and 38%. It's not life-changing or year-changing in terms of the income, where, if you're at the 250 level, 250,000 in production, and especially if you're somewhat new in the business, say 10 years or less, if you're looking at a 10% payout difference, that could be a huge change, and that I think can create a lot of undue stress. Now, at some point in your career, you want to get to where you don't have to worry about those thresholds, and hopefully, if you're growing your business and you're doing a good job for your clients, the minimum production standards at most places are not hard to achieve, hopefully. But again, if your lifestyle does not require an income, if your kind of the income you're comfortable with is below where your company says you need to be, I see that as a very, very, very large conflict of interest for you, because now you're in a position where someone else is dictating how you're going to work. And I just, knowing what's out there and the alternatives, if you have any thought of exploring, I would urge you to talk to some independent advisors. Give me a call. I'm happy to kind of link you up with people that can tell you what it's like on the other side. And again, all the tools are there, which I'll get into in other episodes. All the tools are here. That's not a problem. It's unless you have a very sophisticated practice or very sophisticated, unusual clients, then you might have to piece together the platform a little bit more. But again, for 90% of us, all the tools are the same, or close enough to the same in the independent channels. You can find what you need outside of being an employee. And also a lot of the long-term compensation plans that sort of are supposedly a benefit of being an employee, deferred comp or pension, those are going to be driven based on your production at certain levels. So again, I found time and energy I spent trying to figure out what I might make in a given year was kind of a dead weight loss to my business and to my life. It wasn't productive. And there's all the other little ancillary things, like if there's a marketing allowance at your firm that's driven by your production, or other bits and pieces that you're used to getting, but you have to do a certain production level. I enjoy, if I want to spend half my revenue on marketing, I can do that. If I want to spend zero on marketing, I can do that. And I, as the advisor who know my clients, who know my goals, I get to direct that. So I think you get the point. My general point is, as we go to a new year, we're in a new year, or if you're listening to this in the future, doesn't really matter. The question is, whose goals are you working towards? And you might have very, very big goals. And again, I think you might be slowed down in that scenario as well by having to worry about, will they let me hire another assistant, or how do I team with an advisor? And so at the smaller end of the ambition scale, or the largest end of the ambition scale, I firmly believe being an independent advisor gives you the flexibility to help you create the life and the business you're looking for. So hope that resonates with a few of you out there, and let me know if you have any questions. And until next time, we will see you later.